Okay, today we're going to be doing something a little different. We're going to be making a ring from a simple brass washer right here. It's going to turn out something like this, but instead of crosses, we're going to put arrowheads in there. Those will all be cut from silver, hand cut. Alright, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our dapping block here, and we're going to start the fold on the washer. This is just a 1-ton arbor press I bought at Harbor Freight. They're pretty cheap. Harbor Freight's got some cheap tools, but if you only use them so much, they work out pretty nice. But this press has worked out really nice. So see, we got it down in there with our bearing on the top, and we'll just push it down. And that starts our fold right there, first step. Now what we'll do is we'll heat this, put it in water to anneal it. See, because when you start this bend, all the molecules in the metal on the outside here on this end are stretching, and all the ones on the inside on this side are trying to compress. So right now it's under stress. So we're going to heat it up with our torch here. Now if you're doing silver rings, some soft metals, you got to watch this step. You don't want to overheat it, but with this brass, it's not so susceptible to melting or damage. So we'll get that really hot like this, and then we're gonna douse it in the water. Okay, that's pretty good like that. Douse it once you didn't get burned. And then we'll start to fold it on our next step. Go a little bit farther. Okay, we're going to try to bend this a little bit farther. You can see we got a piece of hard hickory my great uncle gave me at one time, and this stuff's so hard you can't even drive a nail in it. I've drilled a hole in there. We're going to put that in there, our ring and our bearing, and we're going to push that to fold it even farther. Sometimes it gets stuck, but I have here, where at, a couple of pennies I'll stick on there to push it all the way through. There you go. Now we'll have to pull that out, but as you can see, that's really starting to fold nicely. I'll pull that out and we'll check it. Okay, we just got it out of the wood block, and you can see that folded it pretty far. But it's not perfectly straight. It's got a little wobble to it because of that wood. It's not the best die to use. But we have our compression dies. These are made out of round stock on a lathe, and the inside is like a cone, so it gets smaller as it goes in. We're going to put our ring in here, and as you can see, this is a really large size right now. We're going to shrink it down some. That's just a little bit too big of a ring, and then we will push that with a socket. Now normally they sell brass pushers, so if you happen to bottom out, the brass pusher won't ding up or nick up the inside of your die. But I don't have any brass pushers, so I'm using different size sockets. I just have to be careful not to go too far and bottom that out and scar up the inside of here. But we'll put the ring in, we'll find the right size washer, and then we'll compress it down to a smaller size, and it'll straighten it up even. Okay, we're annealing the ring again. Every time you bend the metal, compress it, or stretch it, you want to do this to relax the metal. Makes it a lot easier to work with in between each step. Now we'll set it up in the die, and I'll show you how we shrink it down. Okay, we've got the ring in our die here. Putting it in there, we found the right size socket. We'll set that on there. And I just use this little washer for the top of the socket to give it more pushing space area. And we're going to shove that down. Okay. Now we'll get that out of there. There you can see that. It really rounded the ring up now. It's got a slight angle to it, still a slight bevel there. We're going to keep continuing that process maybe one more time to make it a little smaller, and then we will turn the ring around with the large side down and compress it and straighten up that angle. And I'll get back to you when we have that finished. Okay, we've compressed our ring. We got it all rounded up. I used my ring sizer here to get the inside straight. I have the same measurement on the inside. Hold on, I gotta get something to hold this camera. I'll be right back. Okay, what I was talking about. I'm not too worried about the outside where it still has this slight cone shape like this, because I have the inside right, slightly over 9.5, slightly over 9.5. So now we'll take this. I just have a regular dowel rod with tape, masking tape wrapped around it. We'll fit this ring on here, and we'll take it to the sander, and we will square up the outside of this ring and sand it down. Okay, we've got our ring fit on our dowel rod here, and now we'll take it to the sander and we'll start sanding it down and dressing it up. And we'll continue this process until it's flat and square. And I'll get back to you when I get that finished. Okay, we've got it all sanded down, got it evened up. Now we're going to take it over here to the buffer and buff it to a high shine. Okay, as you can see, we've got it buffed to a high shine on the outside. Now we're going to take it over to our oscillating spindle sander and dress up the inside. We'll not shine that to a high shine, we'll just sand it smooth and take the burr off. Okay, we got the inside cleaned up. Basically, now it's just a brass band ring. take the burr off of that, sharp burr. Got a little cone with some sandpaper wrapped around it. Just hit both sides real quick. I'm going to be editing a lot of this stuff out because if I made the video complete, it's going to be, it'd be a 2.5 hour video. But right now we're going to set up our homemade little lathe tool I made. I don't have a lathe, so I use a drill with a little mandrel and a Dremel tool, and we're going to remove most of the center of this ring where our inlays will be. I'll get back to you when I get that set up. Okay, here's our setup. Like I say, I don't have a lathe, so I got this little rubber mandrel in here. I put the ring on it and tighten it down. You can see that. And then I'll hold the Dremel tool as the drill's turning, and I'll hollow out the inside of this ring here. I'll give you a little shot of that, and then I'll turn the camera off and finish it. You can see I'm starting to get a groove in there, and I'll work it back and forth and hollow out the center of this ring. And when I get that finished, we'll start the next step. Okay, we got the outer edges of the groove started. I don't know if you can see that real good. And we're going to put a little bit bigger disc on here and take the bulk of that metal out of the middle, and then we'll hold some sandpaper on there and smooth up the middle. And I'll get back with you when I get to that step. Okay, I'll give you a little shot of taking some of this bulk out. It's hard to hold this camera and do all this, so I made a little stand to hold it. Show you what I'm doing here. I'll just work this back and forth, grind some of this metal out of here. So basically you get the gist of it. I'm going to hollow out the center, and that's where our inlays will go. And I'll get back to you when I get that all hollowed out and shined up. Okay, now we've cut some small strips of sandpaper here, and we're going to dress the inside up and smooth it out just a little bit. Okay, there's our basic design here. We've got the middle hollowed out. Now we're going to start on our inlays. We'll cut them out, which is going to be a long process, so I'll edit it down, but I'm going to show you how I do it. Duke holding down the fort, like always. Okay, we'll be making our inlays out of silver. I got a lot of silver scraps here from making coin rings and such. And here are the two center punch outs from a 64 Kennedy half. So what we'll be doing here is we're setting them on this surface, and we're going to beat this down with a hammer until it's flat, and then we'll sand it smooth. And after I get this beat down flat and sanded smooth, we'll draw our arrowheads, figure out which ones we're going to put on it, and cut them out. Okay, we got our silver smashed down. So now we're going to take a Sharpie marker and we're going to draw a few little arrowheads on here, maybe some different types. They all look kind of crude and not so neat with this marker drawing, but we'll take some files and we'll dress them up smooth, but we got to make sure that we don't make them any wider than our inside of our band, because they will be glued on the inside of that groove. Okay, we got a few arrowheads drawn on here on our silver with our marker. We got our saw set up, little jeweler's saw, really fine blade, and we're going to start cutting these out, which is going to be a long process, but basically this is how it's done. It's just like a little coping saw. Follow the line there. I'm just trying to get the basic shape here. I'm not hitting the line perfect. This is just to get them cut out quick. I got some small files that after they're cut out, I'll dress them up and make them look good before we glue them in. Okay, we got our first arrowhead roughly cut out. See that? And I have these needle files, several different shapes and sizes, and I'll use these files and sandpaper, and we'll dress up all the edges around, neaten it up, make it look good. We might put some serrated edges on one of these. Okay, we've got our first arrowhead cut out. I don't know what type you would call that. It's just kind of an arrowhead I made up. I'm sure it matches up with some type pretty close. But what we're going to have to do, we're going to have to take this and put a slight bend in it to where it will lay on the inside of our ring. We'll get something with about the same radius metal, and we'll bend that. It's silver, so it's not too hard to bend. And then we'll glue all these pieces in. Now you can see right there, I can actually go a little bit bigger, so I might make a different type of arrowhead in there, maybe an E-notch or something. I made one Clovis, whatever this is, and then might try to make a few different types. That'd be pretty cool. And after I get all these cut out and dressed up, we'll move on to the next step, gluing them in. Okay, we got all of our points cut out. We made 5 of them. That should stretch all the way around the ring. Hope I have enough room for these. And we made some different types. You know, we got a little Clovis and a little Adena point. Tried to make a Thebes and a little serrated point here. Next, I got a socket that's about the same diameter as the inside groove we made on the ring, and I'm going to try to bend these around so they'll lay inside there. Then I'll get them glued in. Then we'll see what we got. We're watching the Great Basin Man here. This guy finds some cool stuff now. Look at that. Yeah, these guys find some awesome stuff. Great Basin Man. Okay, so I just thought of this idea to put the curve in them. I'm laying it in this piece of wood or point on top of there with it's kind of a soft mahogany. And I'm laying a socket that's about the same inside diameter as our groove here. I lay that on top and then pressing this down with this arbor press, and we get this slight groove or slight bend in our point. So it should glue in there nicely. So we'll do the rest of those and then we'll get them glued in. Okay, we got all of our arrowheads bent and curved so they'll lay right down in the ring here. And they'll go all the way around. What we're going to do here now is take this Sharpie marker and we're going to color the inside of the ring here. This will just make the points, which are shiny silver, stand out better against this dark blue background. After I get this all colored in, then we'll just tack them in there with just a tack of super glue. And then we'll move on to the next step, which is mixing up the epoxy. I'm going to actually put, I have right here, some glow-in-the-dark powder in the epoxy, so the ring will actually glow in the dark. And after I get these glued in, I'll show you my setup for putting the epoxy on. Okay, we got all of our points glued in around here, all 5 of them. Now we're going to make our little jig for our epoxy, and I don't know if I'm going to use the glow powder or not. I might put a little bit in it, but it looks really cool, that silver with that dark bluish purple background. So we'll mix up some and put a little glow powder in, see what it looks like before we add it to the ring. Let me get this jig set up and then I'll get back with you. Okay, I'm going to give you a little shot of my setup here for pouring the epoxy. First I cut this square piece of cardboard and I smeared glue on it and I glued the ring down to it and let that dry. Then I rolled up a small strip and put over it, and then I put hot glue all around here to seal it. Now I'll mix up the epoxy. What I'm using, I just bought this at the craft store. It's a 2-part slow drying epoxy. I'll mix this up, mix in our glow powder. I think I will try the glow powder, and then we'll pour it inside there around the ring, up to the rim of the ring. Okay, now we got our epoxy mixed up. I heated it up a little bit to make it flow into the cracks better, and we're going to pour it in now, really slowly. It's flowing around nicely. Just do this until it fills up, and then we'll let that dry. Okay, there you can see our epoxy is poured in right up to the rim of the ring, and now we'll have to let that dry for a day so it hardens up, and then we'll proceed from there, sanding all that off right down to our silver points. That'll be the next thing. Okay, we're back. It's been about, I'd say 22, maybe 21 hours, and our epoxy's fairly hardened up. I have the rest of the epoxy here in this cup, and it's pretty hard. I've tried pushing a knife down through it, and I think it's hard enough to proceed. But what we're going to do, we're going to take this cardboard off of here. Okay, then we'll take this over to the sander. Well, we might not have to do that. Here we go. Pulled it right out. Okay, we get the cardboard off. There's our glue that we glued the ring down. Coming off here. It's like a, it's called E6000 glue. You can buy it at Walmart. Really good stuff. I use it for everything. It's like a rubberized glue. Takes a while to dry, but once it's dry, it's really strong. Now we'll put this on our dowel rod, and we'll take it to the sander, and we'll start cleaning this up. Okay, we got it. We got our ring on our dowel rod, sized up our tape so it fits snug on there, shoved it on, and now we're going to take it to the sander, and I'll give you a little shot of this. It's going to take probably 5 minutes, 10 minutes to get all that epoxy down to where I want it, but I'll give you a little shot of me starting this. And we'll continue that until we get down to our arrowheads that are down in the epoxy. And once I get to that step, we'll move over, put it back on our mandrel, and we'll start fine sanding it. Okay, you can see our arrowheads there are starting to come into view. And we'll go a little farther until they show up, and then we'll start our sanding process. Okay, we're going to take this to the buffer now, and we're just going to try to hit the outside edges and shine them up. I'm not going to buff the epoxy because I'm afraid it'll get too hot and burn it. As you can see, our arrowheads in there starting to come out, and we'll polish up the outside brass first, and then we'll go to our mandrel and start sanding and polishing. Okay, so here's what we're going to do next. We got our ring on our mandrel. We'll start that, and first we'll hit it with 320 grit. Smooth that down. We'll move to 400, and then 1000 grit, 2000 grit, and then we'll finally buff it down with this buffing compound, Meguiar's Scratch X 2.0. I bought this at Walmart. This is good stuff. I also build acoustic instruments, and I use this to buff out the finish to a high gloss when I'm finished. But we'll start this with our 320 grit. I'll give you a little shot of that, how we're doing it first, and then we'll work up to the higher grits and buff this to a high shine. Okay, I had to get my stand. I couldn't hold that. I do this with one hand. So this is basically what we're going to do. Hold it right there, smooth it out, work our way around the ring. Like that. And then we'll move up and wet sand. I usually dip this paper here in water just for a little lubricant. And I'll show you when we get back. Okay, you can see we just finished up our 400 grit wet sanding. You can see it's starting to shine up now. It's going to look really nice, it looks like. There's our Clovis, serrated, there's our Adena, and our Thebes. Next I'll go with the 1000 and then the 2000, and then I'll show you buffing it with the Meguiar's compound. Okay, we've got the ring up to 2000 grit. Now I'm going to buff it a little bit with this Meguiar's. I just put a little bit on the finger and hold it there. I just buff it with my finger. After I get this buffed out, I'll take it over to the bench and just buff it by hand. Finally got the ring finished. Turned out really nice. I hope this is showing up well on the camera. You can see our points there. Turned out really nice. Now, I'm sure there's other ways you could do this, especially, you know, if you had a lathe. But my my mandrel on the drill, it works pretty good. I'm holding this under the light right now, and I just want to show you the glowing part of it. But there's several ways you could do this, I would say, but this is the way that I figured out works best for me. I don't know if you can see that glowing or not. I need to hold it under the light better, but I didn't want to stand here and waste time holding it under the light. I'll take some pictures and put on now. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Next time, I think I'm going to take the kayak out and hit some new areas, look around, surface hunt, see if I can find some new places to sift, and that'll be probably the next video. So I'll catch you on the next one.